The mid-19th century saw the rise of daily newspapers and the rise of a new profession in cities across the country. Newsboys, or newsies, were often very poor or homeless children living in orphanages. The more fortunate ones would dress in thin fabrics, light jackets, and hats. Most were dressed in dirty rags with no shoes. Rain or shine, newsboys would line up at the publishing houses every morning to buy as many copies as they could carry. They would then spend their days roaming the streets, reselling their copies in hopes of earning a profit. New York City was becoming a booming industrial center by the mid-1800s, but poverty was more widespread than ever. As a result, the demand for child laborers was very high, not only in the new factories, but as street peddlers as well. Children as young as 6 would work long shifts to help their family or support themselves on the streets. In New York City, 2 major daily newspapers arose: Joseph Pulitzer's New York World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal. By the 1890s, the 2 publishers were locked in a circulation battle. They lured readers in with sensational yellow journalism headlines, and newsies exaggerated them even further on the streets to make sales. Hearst may have even started a war just to sell more papers. He sent Frederick Remington and Richard Harding Davis to Cuba in December of 1896 after a rebellion against Spanish colonial rule. Legend has it Remington sent a telegram to Hearst telling him it was calm in Cuba and there would be no war. Hearst replied, "Please remain. You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war." Several scholars doubt the validity of the conversation, though, mostly because Davis never gave the reason that there would be no war as to why Remington wanted to leave Cuba. War was good for circulation, but by 1899 the Spanish-American War had ended and circulation fell. The newsies paid 50 cents for 100 papers, and there were no refunds for what they couldn't sell. They determined how much they would resell their copies for. Hearst and Pulitzer continued to be locked in their circulation battle and decided they needed to make more money. Their solution was upping the newsies' price to 60 cents for 100 papers. Hearst and Pulitzer would make a greater profit, but the newsies, who already worked under harsh conditions, would have to sell 10 extra papers just to make the same profit. The end of the 19th century saw a lot of reform, and labor unions were on the rise. The newsies were fed up with the way the publishing companies treated them, and they first took action against them in Long Island City when they discovered a journal deliveryman was cheating them with short bundles. On July 18, 1899, they tipped over his wagon, stole his papers, and ran him out of town. Word traveled quickly to the newsies of downtown Manhattan, and the next day they formed their own union and officially went on strike. The publishers didn't take the strike very seriously at first because their opponents were orphan children. Soon newsies from not only the city but all across the Northeast were participating, and circulation fell by 2/3. Pulitzer and Hearst quickly offered to drop their price to 55 cents, but the strikers and their leaders rejected and continued their strike. Other competing newspapers in the city began fairly extensive coverage of the strike, which put even more pressure on Hearst and Pulitzer. They created public sympathy for the kids by portraying their colorful leaders like Kid Blink and Racetrack Higgins. Kid Blink's real name was Louis Belletti, and he became the face of the Newsboys Strike. He was a fairly small child and was blind in one eye and wore an eye patch. At just 18, he took on the responsibility of rallying the newsies from all across the city, and he had a hand in organizing the rally in New Irving Hall. 5,000 newsboys from Manhattan, Jersey City, Brooklyn, and Harlem attended the meeting, so they knew they were all on the same page. Many competing newspapers sent reporters to cover the Irving Hall rally, among others. Kid Blink's speeches were often quoted to include his rough-and-tumble New York City dialect. Kid Blink and a few of the other older newsboys broke the strike after they were speculated to have been paid off by Pulitzer and Hearst, but the others kept it going for 2 full weeks. The publishers saw how much money they were losing and finally gave in. They refused to negotiate with the newsies, so they just sent messengers to spread the word of their compromise. The newsies' price stayed at 60 cents, but they agreed to buy back the copies that the newsies were not able to sell. They accepted, and the strike came to an end. Through their strike, the city's most unfortunate children were able to cut the 2 largest newspapers' circulation significantly. They had the support of the public on their side, as well as the support of the all-important advertisers who pulled their ads from Pulitzer and Hearst papers. They demonstrated that seemingly powerless kids could rise up against millionaires and improve their situation. The Newsboys Strike of 1899 left a lasting legacy as well, as it inspired a Disney movie in the 90s and later a musical on Broadway. The Newsboys Union may have disbanded after the strike, but their story continues to encourage generations later.